Good morning, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this podcast.
This is Box of Neutrals, live from Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. Let's get 'em, boys, with Michael Laminato and Rob James. With your house band, Tommaso Stellato and the Tomato Laminatos.
I hope you enjoyed the mid-season break after just one race, one Formula One Grand Prix, and everyone needed a bit of a lie down after the year we've had. It is Box of Neutrals returning to preview the Grand Prix at Imola. I can't say the full name, I don't have enough time. What I can say, though, is joining me, as he does sometimes, not Rob James, it is Rodney Gordon from Super License F1 Podcast. Rod, how are you doing?
It's great to be here with a slightly similar name to Rob James. Really glad to be here.
Yes, Rod, if you misspell your last name, I'm sure we could give it a crack. It's good to have Formula One back for another week. We're going to go through, well, some of the changes that did happen after Easter when people presumably came out of their chocolate-related coma. And we will talk about, as is customary every month or so, why a race in Miami probably won't happen, but they want to believe that it will. All that's to come on this episode of Box of Neutrals.
Manscaped, proudly sponsoring Box of Smooth Balls. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code Box of Neutrals at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code Box of Neutrals. Your balls will thank you, trademark.
Good to have you on the show, Rodney. It's not Christmas. It feels like Christmas because you're here, though. It's a good feeling.
I bring presents and joy wherever I go, so I can understand why that's on theme.
It's good. Yeah, we feel like we should do this more often. I'm enjoying the random gifts that you've presented over Zoom, of course, in a socially distanced, responsible way. It's weird to have had such a break, though, in Formula One so early. I don't feel like they earned this break, this 3-week break.
I've never worked a job where I worked 1 week and then got to have 3 weeks off. What do they think, they are firemen or something? It's such a disrupted start to the season when we've all watched, Drive to Survive, and it's like, what do I do? Watch it again? Do I watch it several times? How more excited can I be? If you want excited spectators who are, chomping at the bit, frothing at the mouth to get some F1 action, it's a tough situation to be in.
How many times do you have to watch it before you no longer survive the drive? Because surely if you watch it enough times consecutively, you're going to suffer dehydration, you're going to get muscle cramps, bed sores probably.
No, most people don't understand that the title is about the audience, that it's an endurance challenge to see how many times you can watch it. Because, they're tracking our play counts. We all know that. I'm in the envious position of wanting to watch it and wanting to get through the story myself to observe it as a punter. But then also, on my podcast, Super License, we do commentary tracks on all the episodes, so we get to rewatch them twice. And then the stunning thing is that I assumed everybody listening would also rewatch with us and understand when we're referencing things and watching the screen at the same time. It turns out nobody's interested in doing that. So it seems like this series is a one and done thing. And that's the problem that Formula One's created for itself with these gaps.
What you need to do is also, layered underneath your reviews, have descriptive commentary. So you would have 3 or 4 voices talking at the same time. Obviously, you would have to stream the show in the background as well, which is illegal. But as long as you say no copyright intended, you'll be fine. That's how I understand the internet works. I've been on it once or twice, and it's generally how I think it goes.
So far, so good.
It's a good thing, though, that the last race in Bahrain was good. Because imagine if it was no good, Rodney. Imagine if it was a bad race. The kind that we used to see last year, or even the year before that. And we had no excitement building up to Imola, which is probably, let's burst this bubble now. The track that Imola is probably not going to be great for racing. So I feel like at least we've had that memory to cling on to, and we might need it for another couple of weeks still.
Yeah, it's true. With the season opener, in Australia, and I'm obviously, I wear the t-shirts with the Australian flag. I have the hat with the corks. I'm Australian as it comes, but it's not a great season opener in terms of action. Good thing for Formula One in Europe and other parts of the world. That race usually happens in the middle of the night. No one even notices. They just pretend it doesn't even happen. They just check the points tally and go, But we're not so lucky this time. We had a primetime race. It was a corker of a race. And we're going to be arriving at, is this old? This is the Formula One of old. This is the staid and just not much is going to happen. There's going to be a lot of effort made from everybody's point of view to generate stories. This isn't one of those races that's going to drop a whole bunch of interesting narratives in our lap. I mean, maybe I'm cursing ourselves and maybe we're going to have a great race, but if that's a service that I can provide by talking down the race so that it turns out to be good, then I'm happy to do that.
Oh, we need more of that, I think. This will be one of those races that probably doesn't appear in Drive to Survive. Although, saying that, again, if they're following Mercedes, maybe it'll be great. I still feel like they should have been... I mean, Mugello last year was great, or Portugal was also... Well, we do have Portugal later in the year, but I feel like Imola, people get psyched up about just the plate, like the name of it, but I feel like it's the more difficult to race track. I don't want to talk this down too early. We've got to watch the race this weekend, so I don't want you to feel like you shouldn't watch it because it's not going to be any good. But I feel like it was the track that was less likely to produce a good race. I mean, I'm trying to think what happened last year, and other than, was it Vettel's tyre? Verstappen's tyre? Not Vettel's tyre, it probably crashed by then. Verstappen's tyre exploded, I think. And that's all I remember.
There were a lot of races, it turned out, in a short period of time last year, and they all kind of blended together. This was one of those oddball ones, though, that was like, hi, you haven't been here for a while. But yeah, I think you're right. Some kind of tyre mishap. I mean, these are the X factors that we need in a race like this. If we're going to have a good one, if it's all by the book, we're all just going to show up, go around the circuit a bunch of times and go home. We need something. We need bad pit stops. We need crazy crashes and spins. Please help us out, Sebastian. And we need, maybe a controlled, very, very safe fire. That would be good.
Yeah, I do like a controlled fire. Why not? Give it a go. Someone to slash the tires, drop some stingers on the road. All that kind of stuff would be useful. Look, we've mentioned Sebastian Vettel already. Let's talk about him because it's weird to say this so early in the season, but feels like the man under pressure already.
Besieged.
Yeah, besieged. Yes, he's high on that system of adjectives you use for people who inevitably feel like they're going to lose their job at some point. Although, we've been saying that for Kimi Räikkönen for a while, and he continues to continue, which is good on him. Good for him. But Sebastian Vettel, I mean, this was meant to be the start of something great, or the start of something great again for Sebastian Vettel, I suppose, after the unfortunate times of Ferrari, the unpleasantness at Ferrari, I suppose we could call it. And I know it's off the basis of one race, but it felt very... You can't say old school Sebastian Vettel because that would be implying that he won a championship. The middle school Sebastian Vettel is what it felt like.
Yeah, you've got Marsaf now sort of making every excuse under the sun about him and saying, oh, well, it was an unfamiliar car and he's not used to the team and he's not used to this. He doesn't know where to hang his coat when he takes it off. He put his helmet on back to front, had to spin it around and make sure he could see out the visor. All these things, every excuse under the sun, every excuse in the playbook he dropped out there. But the problem is that this was meant to be the great reset for Sebastian Vettel, and he's had months and months and months to prepare for this mental switch that he's supposed to be making. But the problem is he's turned up and he's done the exact same thing that we've seen him do the last few years. And you can say, yeah, he's not familiar with the car, he's not familiar with where the buttons are and all the rest of it. We've all bought new TVs and we all have to learn new buttons. That's something we all deal with all the time. If he had form at Ferrari for being slow, and then he turned up at Aston Martin and had a contact and a spin, that would be one thing. But this is a clear continuation of form. For sure, it's only one race, and we can't write him off. But it doesn't help, especially when we have these big gaps between races. It can't help for us or for him to show up and have a poor race at the start. Even you think that he would be just tippy-toeing around the track, just saying avoid all contact with everybody. But no, you can't do it.
No, and of all the people to hit, it wasn't even in the points. Esteban Ocon out of the points. At least if he was fighting for anything higher, even one position higher in the points would have been better. But no. And look, not only is it first race, but there were a lot of mitigating factors, I guess. I want to say dodgy qualifying, but part of that was also his fault for ignoring yellow flags. But, he didn't cause the yellow flag, so I guess that's a pro in the pro column. Sebastian Vettel didn't cause a crash in qualifying, and then was given a pretty crap strategy in the race, but still, again, he did crash his car. I feel like, the Ferrari form question of Sebastian Vettel's later years at Ferrari, crashing a lot, spinning a lot, getting shown up by Charles Leclerc, admittedly in a car he didn't feel that comfortable in, but still, it all comes down to that trend of the increasing, it almost feels like mental kind of insecurity almost. And a lot of people link that back to that crash in 2018 in Germany where he crashed out from the lead in the wet when he was leading the championship and then I think didn't lead the championship again after that. I think he lost it on that day even. And that's spinning on into this. I thought it was interesting this weekend, Helmut Marko, well, he said a lot of things, Helmut Marko, the last week. We ignored most of them. But one thing he did say that I thought was interesting was that he felt that, and he said this apparently to Sebastian as well, that he should have taken a year off to reset his frame of mind before deciding whether or not he wanted to commit to another contract. It feels to me like that seems actually correct. For once, Helmut Marko says something I agree with, because it feels like that's really what he needs.
Helmut Marko can be a difficult man to see eye to eye with sometimes, and I'm not just saying that because of his eye, but maybe I was, secretly. Maybe I was. That's a bit of a low blow. Sorry. Here I am, subbing in, lowering the tone of Box of Neutrals. I'm so sorry. Anyway, I wonder how self-serving that comment is, because you have to look at the Red Bull lineup and wonder whether they're keeping their options open for a potential return of their superstar kid, Sebastian Vettel, although he's not really a kid anymore. His hairline will attest to that. Oh boy, I'm full of low blows today. Anyway, we see it a lot, and we're seeing it a lot more in the Formula One journalism world at the moment, of little quips coming from other team principals about drivers and team dynamics. And it's like, who cares what you think about another team and another driver, to be honest? I mean, I feel like we're in a bit of a world where a team principal can make a sort of tongue-in-cheek joke, and that becomes the headline, and then someone could tweet something and it's all about, oh, this person says that, but we lose all the sort of context around it. And I just think that we're in a bit of a weird. We're in the when you put the microscope on people too much, you can make too much of their comments. So I don't pay too much attention to what Helmut Marko thinks about other people. I don't paid too much attention to his comments about himself, to be honest, because he has a tendency to run at the mouth, if you know what I'm saying. But my concern, I guess, would be that if Sebastian Vettel takes a year off, he's not coming back, is he?
Well, that's a really interesting point to bring up, because to cast our minds back to whenever it was, May, I think, last year, when we found out, and he found out that he wasn't going to be driving at Ferrari, even though he thought he would be driving at Ferrari, because that's what they told him. And then they said, actually, no, it'll be Carlos Sainz. It felt like that was going to be it. Like, he was going to bow out at the end of the year, one more shot at Ferrari, because it's already seemed like in the season before he wasn't really enjoying it that much, and certainly didn't seem to be enjoying Ferrari that much either. And, I get the logic, he's going back to sort of a more independent vibe team. Certainly a team that's just not Ferrari is probably an improvement, considering the whole situation he had there. But I'm almost worried at this point, and I know, again, one race, it's only one race. But again, we've had nothing to talk about for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That he's rushed into this contract to stick around in F1, knowing that he has something to prove anyway, based on his last years. Because he is a 4-time world champion, so you could say he's got nothing to prove. But trying to salvage a bit of the reputation he lost in the last couple of years, when actually all he's going to do, if he's not fully 100% into it, is just kind of do a lot of that. We're going to have a lot of middling races. We'll have some good races. We'll have some bad ones. And at the end of it, it'll be like, well, what was the point of this?
I feel like, even if he wouldn't admit it, I feel like he is a little bit of a... he loves the praise, and he loves people talking, well about his achievements and his skill. Whether, his achievements are his achievements. You can't take them away. His skill and his form, I guess now, that natural feel has just left him, and he hasn't turned it into a, brainless muscle memory type of thing. He isn't an F1 driving machine like a Lewis Hamilton is, who, he's probably lost his youthful natural instincts, but he's replaced them with these very highly tuned instincts for driving in the wet and all the rest of it, all the areas that Lewis Hamilton excels in. Vettel just didn't do any of that. I don't know if it was complacency. I don't know if it was just being people pumping up his tires too much, and then him forgetting that he has to kind of still prove on track his worth. But it seems like the form has left him. The glory days of old are still echoing throughout the Formula One paddock. That's why he's still got to drive, and it's up to him to put in the performances. And the performance doesn't necessarily mean winning a championship with Aston Martin. It just means finishing a season without people going, boy, you've got a bad smell about you. So it's up to him. He can write the final chapters of his F1 legacy himself. But I'd have to say that we're in the downslope. We're in that sort of, when you watch a romantic comedy, about 2/3 of the way through, the friends will have a falling out, or there's another girl that comes into the scene, and it all just seems like it's about to fall off the rails. And then at the last minute, boom, it comes back to life. We need a little bit of third act magic, does Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Although you can tell he's preparing to leave Formula One because he's taken an agricultural internship.
Oh, goodness me.
He did it last year, and he confirmed it this year. So he's getting ready to be sent to the farm. We all know what that means. So good luck to him, I think. Look, we'll find out.
The Aussie soap neighbours, he would move to Brisbane.
Look, it is one race. I hope he improves, but we'll wait and see. We'll just wait and see. A couple of other changes I want to mention here as well. The big one from the last couple of weeks at Mercedes, James Allison, who's the technical director, will become the slightly differently titled Chief Technical Officer. I always thought they were the same thing this whole time, but they're not. It means he won't be doing lots of day-to-day stuff. This will happen in the middle of the year. A man named Mike Elliott. That name will feel less generic over time, I'm sure, less made up. From the 1st of July, he'll be the technical director for Mercedes. And look, we know Toto Wolff is staying, so that's a good plus, I guess, for the team. It's a good level of constancy, I suppose. But James Allison kind of moving into the background. He's wanted to move back a little bit. There's definitely going to be at least one driver change among the lineup at the end of the year. And it's of course it's going to be either Bottas or Hamilton. They only have two. George Russell one of them will become George Russell. Not literally. The seat's just going to be filled by him. And I guess it's up to whether or not...
Let's not go too early.
It's a metamorphosis process. It depends on Lewis Hamilton, really, doesn't it? If he wants to stay, then Bottas is gone. And maybe if he wants to go, Bottas might be gone. We don't know. But it does suddenly feel like Mercedes is moving on, if you like. I'm not saying that's going to be, the downfall of Mercedes or anything like that, but it's really increasingly feels like we're moving into a new era of Mercedes. And that does tend to be when these super successful teams, Ferrari being the last one, become vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, for those of us who follow Formula One and want some competition at the front, we can only hope that that's the case, right? I think a lot will depend on how this year goes. I mean, obviously, if Mercedes again blitz it and Hamilton cruises to an easy victory, it'll make the negotiations difficult for the following year because obviously he is on a 1-year contract, and I think. He seems to be holding out for everything that he feels he deserves. But having said that, he is up against the master negotiator, Toto Wolff, who knows how to just dangle the carrot just enough to get you hungry for it. And he might be able to convince... while he's dangling the carrot, he might be able to slip one of the little cucumbers off Lewis's plate and just do a little bit of a switcheroo so that Lewis ends up with all the same number of vegetables on his plate, but he actually doesn't gain any more if you follow the metaphor. Anyway, I think what I'm trying to say is that if Mercedes do well and Lewis does well, which I think they will, the cards will be in Toto's favour in terms of the negotiations. Do I think Lewis will stay? Yes, I do. I think even if Mercedes loses the championship this year, he'll stay. He'll be even more hungry for more success. I don't think Lewis is going anywhere. I think that's really bad news for Valtteri Bottas.
So the question is then, and I think we talked about this in the last couple of weeks because it's going to be what we're talking about until summer, which is when Toto Wolff says he wants the deals done, although he said that last year and it took until February, I think, for them to do the deals. But yeah, what happens to Bottas then? Does he do a straight swap with Russell and go back to Williams and become the guy who can help rebuild that team? Or does he then quietly bow out for a Finnish sauna?
That might happen. I mean, I certainly wouldn't rule that out at this stage, but I think that would be a bit of it'd be unbefitting for someone with Bottas's clear skill. I know it doesn't always seem it week in, week out, given who he's up against, but I think he's a skilled driver who has a lot to offer, certainly more than Vettel. So if he winds up at any team further down the grid than Aston Martin, that would be a big shame. It's just the question is, where does he go? And I mean, this has been the problem for years and years as Formula One sees the turnstile spinning around and around, all these great drivers coming in and just being shown the door again straight away, it seems. I don't know what he even wants to do. It's not clear what he actually wants to do. He has sort of other interests and he runs a rally team or something, and I think he's just bought an ice hockey team. He's got, he could keep himself busy, but that's not the same as doing what you love and what you're good at. So, he might end up at Williams, but boy, that would be back at Williams, I should say. But boy, that would be it'd be a step back.
Yeah, it's like a bizarro version of your driver changes in F1 2021. I haven't released that one yet, I guess, have they? 2020? I don't know. I stopped buying them a little while ago.
Yeah, boy. When I realized it was the same game every year, I'm out.
Box of Neutrals.
We'll get back to talking about the news for the week in just a moment, but this is the part of the program where I get to tell you that support for Box of Neutrals is brought to you by Manscaped. Trademark. They are the best in men's below-the-waist grooming and hygiene. Manscaped is taking over the world. It is now available in all of Europe, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand when the borders are open. Manscaped is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. Join the movement for all your below-the-waist grooming needs. And I'm pleased to say, Rodney, you're being inducted here, forcibly being compelled to purchase Manscaped products. I haven't told you this before we get you on the program.
Good to know.
The Lawnmower 3.0 is what we're talking about. And, I mean, we've been talking about all of the high points over the last couple of weeks of the Lawnmower 3.0. I feel like waterproof technology is something we don't talk enough about because how often does it come up in your life? There's still phones today that are not waterproof, which is incredible considering you take them out of the house. This, Rodney, this unit is completely waterproof. Can you believe it?
You know that I love a waterproof unit. I have t-shirts printed that say I love waterproof units. I have a t-shirt, a hat that says ask me about waterproof units. I'm crazy for things being waterproof. And you know why? I just want to go about my day regardless of the liquid situation in my immediate environment. I just don't want to have to worry about that. I've got enough to worry about in my life without having to worry about it. If I want to walk through my neighbour's yard while the sprinkler's on, while I'm, getting my weed whacking action on, that's up to me. I shouldn't have to. I don't want to even change my stride if I encounter some kind of deep creek or perhaps an ocean or a beach swell. I just want to be able to do my business. I've got stuff I've got to do. I'm a busy guy, and waterproofing is the solution that I need in my life.
It is about ultimate flexibility, isn't it? There's no situation in which you couldn't use the lawn. Okay, probably if you were in a fire, you probably wouldn't work. The batteries might explode. I don't know. That just seems to be what batteries do in infernos, but that hasn't been tested as far as I know, so we won't talk about that.
It doesn't. I couldn't tell you because I'm too wet all the time.
Exactly. All you have to worry about is keeping it in water. You don't keep it in water, but you can use it a lot in water, whether it's because rainfall has become unpredictably severe, whether the sea level is rising in your state or territory due to climate change. You know that your Lawnmower 3.0 will remain unaffected. It will continue to be used. Do you want to go and visit the Great Barrier Reef before it disappears? You can take it with you. It's got an LED light on it too, Rodney. Can help you better illuminate the scenery.
Now I'll be able to dive into my neighbour's pool at night and see what's down there because I know there's something down there of interest. Otherwise, they wouldn't cover the pool at night.
You're going to have a real journey of discovery with the Lawnmower 3.0 from Manscaped. And I've got good news, Rodney. I should have told you this before I made you buy it. But you can get 20% off and free shipping with the code Box of Neutrals at manscaped.com.
I'm going to have to buy another one.
Please, buy as many as you want. The more you buy with Box of Neutrals as the code word, the more it's good for us. The more this sponsorship might even be extended. You never know. So that's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. I don't know how they do it. It's so cheap. Incredible. Use the code word Box of Neutrals. And the favourite ending to this ad, I get to say it every week, your balls will thank you.
You're listening to Box of Neutrals.
Let's cover off a little bit of news before we wrap up the show. One that is in some senses surprising because we only get this news usually when he's about to jump in the car, but it's Nico Hülkenberg. He's signed as a reserve driver for Aston Martin. Just in case Vettel decides to retire spontaneously, I suppose. It's good to have someone in your back pocket. But I do feel like, people are excited by the idea that we might see him back in a car again this year as we did was it 2 or 3 times last year? I can't remember. I think he got 3 races, didn't he, under his belt?
Because there was one for Stroll, and I think they were hoping it would only be one for Perez, but it turned out to be 2.
That's right, yes.
And he didn't drive in one. That's why it felt like 2.
Yes, because he had some kind of
didn't
problem
even
early,
start.
didn't he?
That's what it was. Yeah, look, I mean, some people call him the Rodney of the Formula One field. I mean, it's weird. It's weird, and it's weird that he's changing his official role from Formula One super sub to just Aston Martin super sub. And as you say, when the announcement comes that Nico Hülkenberg is going to be taking up some kind of driver capacity. You are waiting for the COVID announcement, but no, this time he's just sitting on the sidelines.
But his problem here is that probably one of the drivers is already immune. I mean, Lance Stroll's already had it. So you're really hoping that Sebastian Vettel, I don't know, licks the wrong doorknob or something, and all of a sudden he's the one who's going to... I mean, no one's hoping that, obviously, but, maybe. The signs are slim. He shouldn't have tied himself down to one team, like you say.
Maybe he can swing past Brazil and pick up one of those variants and just take it back with him.
Yeah, that could sort things out. But that's, good on him. I guess he'll probably get some nice merchandise. Hopefully he gets a company car, although for a reserve driver role, you probably think that that's unlikely. But who knows? Who knows what's in the contract? Sprint races have reportedly been agreed to. This has been a story that's been going on forever. and it's not officially confirmed. I said reportedly. Silverstone, Monza, and Interlagos is the 3 races where it's probably going to be happening because the team's all got some extra money for it. That's all it comes down to in the end, I suppose, doesn't it? But I don't know. We've talked about this plenty on this show, but Rodney, you're a new opinion here. What's your take on this idea of sprint races? Because not all there's still kind of, I can imagine problems in terms of, points and stuff like that. But what do you make of it?
Look, I have a long history of disagreeing with changes to qualifying. I'm one of those holdouts who is like, it's fine, leave it, fix all the other problems. So I'm not looking. I mean, I'm looking forward in a curious way to how this goes. Do I think it'll be good? No. Do I want to see it put in place permanently? No. I think one of the problems for me is that it puts an extra burden on the casual Formula One viewer to watch one extra thing. It's another day that you have to tune in and dedicate some time to instead of just rocking up for the main thing. And I understand if you go to the movies, there are people who love to sit in the foyer, get there early, pick their seat early, get in there before all the trailers start and watch everything, stay till the end of the credits and leave. That's the kind of person that watches all of practice, all of qualifying, all the rest of it. Some of us just like to rock up 1 minute after the movie's already started and leave when it looks like it's getting boring. That's what some of us want. So Formula One needs to cater to everybody, and that's what I'm getting concerned about. But I mean, again, what are the motivations of doing this change? And it seems like it's about dollars, having an F1 weekend that offers increased value, potentially growing some viewership on Saturdays so that they can sell more ads to people, you and me, basically. I worry about the motivation, and I'm not sure. I mean, this is the age-old thing. I'm not sure we're fixing the real problem. So until they fix the real problem, I could give a stuff about this.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary, is that this isn't really fixing any problem. I don't really mind. Like, my problem, weirdly, is specifically just the idea that the winner will get points. I don't feel like points should be going anywhere except Sunday.
No, geez, no. Don't like it.
Which maybe is a niche opinion. People won't. But because the other argument I was going to say is, imagine you get to the last weekend of the year, last race, and the championship is won on a Saturday. But then on the other hand, you could say, well, championships are won months in advance. So what difference does it make?
True.
But I don't know. It's something about, maybe it'll work great, but also if overtaking's hard as it is,
yeah,
then it's just going to be hard on Saturday anyway.
Exactly right. When we get the racing right, sprint races become so much more viable and interesting and exciting. And as it is right now, they're just not. I mean, I remember when we had this conversation about the idea of splitting qualifying across 2 different days and you do aggregate laps. And I remember, I think it was David Coulthard said, what that will do is rob us the kind of majesty of a qualifying lap, a single lap, a single time set over one lap. And the sprint race is going to do the same thing. I think it's also, it seems to be about generating a highlights package that they can run before Sunday, before the race, to say, do you like this? Come and get more of it. Come and get 2 hours more of it. And again, I just don't know that that's the right move. I mean, it might mean that we get to watch that instead of Crofty's little, showcase of here's an overtake that happened 10 years ago. We might get one again today. I mean, I guess that's better than nothing, right?
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, if it means that it's keeping whoever's designing the graphics on their toes for the whole weekend, it's about creating jobs, Rodney, in this environment. Can't say no to that. But we'll see. Look, it's not agreed yet, but apparently it'll happen. And one in Silverstone it's obviously later in the year, can't be earlier. Probably in July. We'll see in July. So we'll see. I guess we should keep an open mind. We shouldn't be too negative, but yeah, we can also be a bit negative. Finally, let's talk about the calendar, because nothing's changed yet on this year's calendar, which is good. So far, so good. Anyway. But in the future calendar, this was meant to be on this year's calendar, I think, a race in Miami, another United States Grand Prix. This race, I want to emphasize again, the one they're pushing so hard for is in a car park, which F1 has done before, and it didn't work. And look, I know it's a different car park. It's a bigger car park. It's a more varied layout, but I still don't get why we're pushing so hard. But this has been derailed several times by residents groups and the like. It tends to happen whenever they try and get street circuits up, particularly in the United States, it seems. And it was on the back burner for a little while. Of course, COVID also happened, and that has derailed a lot of things, as you probably know. But there's another motion before the council there in Miami Gardens to set up a memorandum of understanding to get this thing going. What I really thought was interesting, Rodney, though, was that some of the legal proceedings that happened, this is the United States, of course, that happened last year, or the year before, I don't know, all time has blended into one, accused the promoters here and the plan for Formula One of being racist, of exercising racial discrimination because the area around the stadium, the car park, is majority African American. The Memorandum of Understanding is now promoting the Grand Prix there as the first majority African American city to host a Formula One race. You just turn it round and you've got a marketing point. Isn't that incredible?
You gotta turn a negative into a positive whenever you can in marketing. This is such a shrewd move. This is incredible. But I mean, if you're gonna start worrying about bringing or colonizing areas of land that previously were owned by African Americans, isn't that like the whole of America though? Isn't that the problem here?
Yes, you could layer this
on a long enough
like
timeline. We're all invaders, so yeah, that's an overall problem, I think. What we need to get a race going in Miami or anywhere else is another viable option. Because if they could run a race in Phoenix or in LA or wherever, all of a sudden Miami would just sort its brown stuff out and just get either a race and an organization, kind of something put together. I understand they're talking about memorandums of things. This is all about avoiding problems down the track, but this doesn't actually get us to a signed agreement to have a race. So if there was pressure from somewhere else, let's run 3 races at COTA. I don't know, but there needs to be another option in play. This is like, not that I'm a big proponent for this, but this is free market, stuff in action. There needs to be pressure coming from somewhere else for another United States race. I think we do need a second race in that, upper 48 or whatever they call it, but there needs to be another race there. We just need, I think, a third option to come along and tell Miami to shit or get off the pot. They'll sort it out. Quick, smart. No worries.
I think it's a really good point, though, because, the reason they're so up about Miami is because they have plans. They sort of know what they want to do. And the owner of the stadium, Stephen Ross, he wants the race, obviously. So there's among a lot of parts, goodwill to make it happen. Just not all of them, including, in part, the council, which previously kind of voted against it, and also residents groups. I don't know how... It's always hard to know, isn't it, when you hear, residents groups are taking action or whatever, if that represents everyone or just some small concerned citizens or whatever, similar to in Albert Park, where...
We have that here. I was going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a massive part of the population, but, if you do things right, you get a lot of publicity. So I'd love to know if anyone's in Miami or Florida, how big is the opposition there? Because it does seem like, while, again, people like Stephen Ross and whoever might be behind it, if the residents are against it and it keeps going to court and stuff... there are lots of other cities in America. There are heaps. That's my understanding.
Big place.
So,
there's car parks everywhere too.
Yeah, go to a Walmart or something. They got massive car parks. I'm sure you could find a car park in every city that you could race around. So, and I don't understand. Yeah, and I don't understand as well. And this is maybe just a personal thing, but not that I don't understand the attraction of Miami generally, but if it's not going to be the iconic backdrop of, whatever beach in Miami or whatever, if it, again, is just in a car park, then I doubly don't understand this under that destination city headline thing. There are heaps of other places, you listed some of them already, that you could try for, even if it is just to finalise a deal here. So I just don't know why I don't know why they're trying so hard. Just just be relaxed.
You know that part of the Monaco track where you come around the corner and you go into the tunnel and they have that wall there that's painted with an empty harbour with just blue water?
Yeah.
Maybe we could just put the race somewhere else, but paint the backdrop all the way around the edge with palm trees or, people on roller skates or whatever is in Miami. Or alternatively, we've all lived our life on Zoom for the last year and we know that the Zoom background technology is getting better and better. All we need is just a still shot of Miami. We can have all the car on boards just superimpose the background. It'll be fine. Just paint everything green to make it, a bit less fuzzy around the edges. And, just get it sorted out. I don't care if you call it the Miami Grand Prix, but you run it in Portland. Just give me a race.
And if it's a green background, you can tactically delete Sebastian Vettel spinning in the background. If you match the colour of the car, it'll all be good. So I think it'll work fine. I think that's the solution, personally. But... we'll wait and see. I'm sure we'll hear more news about this next week, the week after, month after that, until people forget about it.
Oh, you want to listen to Box of Neutrals? Well, how about you fill out this form, yellow one?
Next round of the season's coming up this weekend, which means another round of Formula McGinley, the more popular title for Fantasy Formula One, is upon us. Yes, we're playing Fantasy Formula One again this year. But things are a little different. No, the website is not necessarily more straightforward to use. I think it's slightly faster, but it's really up to you whether or not that's the case on your side of things. But the rules are a bit different. They've changed it up a little bit, and now it's potentially going to be a little bit more difficult for you to really get the most out of your picks, out of the team, unless you really know what you're doing. And I have a man who does know what he's doing. We've tweeted about him before because he's given us some really great insight online. And so we've brought him on to try and get you the inside line into how you can make the most out of your Fantasy Formula McGinley team. His name's Matt Walker. He joins me now. Matt, how are you doing?
Not too bad, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing very well, except for my team. It's doing pretty badly, actually. I only just logged on before I got you on here, and it's a shocker. 240th out of 340 entries so far. 342 to be exact. Which, look, I felt like I did kind of all right this time last year. I did trail off towards the end. And I thought my picks were quite good. But I'm clearly not clued in enough at this point in time. Tell us a little bit about the changes to the competition this year, because I think a lot of people probably did what I did last year, entered the team and then kind of sat on it. But that's not necessarily the way to go now.
No. So like you last year, I sort of picked a team, and as I've said in my tweets, picked a team that I thought was undervalued for what they had given it monetary value, and it just gained value over time, and then I was able to do things with it. But this year, they've brought in a couple of very key changes to the subs and the valuing of drivers and constructors that sort of shake that whole thing up.
The value of drivers and constructors it seems to me more important now anyway. It's not something I paid too much attention to, except for when I was obviously picking the team, and I think deleting Sebastian Vettel from my team at some point last year. I suspect a lot of people did. I'm looking at my team now again. I don't know why I put him in my team this year, but I'm sure it seemed like a good idea at the time. But the value I can already see on my team is changing quite a bit after only one round. And this really goes hand in hand as well with the idea that there are a lot more changes available to be made each weekend. I think it was only one last year. You can essentially shuffle your entire team this year. What kind of effect is that having at the moment? And I mean, this is, I think, really the key to maximizing points, isn't it? Is playing with your team more this year.
Yeah, so I think what they're trying to do to get more engagement outside of the weekends is where last year there was some change in value, but it was purely tied to results. And because of that, they sort of leveled out mid-season and not much happened. So what they've done this year is they've not only tied the value of the drivers and constructors to their on-track results, they've also tied it to the trading activity of the players. So in very much box of neutrals fashion, stocks up, stocks down, if everyone's dumping Sebastian Vettel because he had a bad race, not only will he get slugged for having a bad race and maybe lose a little bit of value, but if half of all of Fantasy F1 is dumping him as well, he'll lose even more value. And we've seen that happen this week in the opposite direction with Yuki Tsunoda. Unfortunately, I jumped off Yuki Tsunoda just after the race because I think it was telling me he was going to lose value. But it seems everyone's jumped on the Tsunoda train, and he's gained $500,000 since Bahrain.
And this is part of a long-term strategy, right? Now, we've got a long season ahead of us, still 22 more rounds, theoretically anyway, to come with only one round down. And you can already get the sense, I guess, that making money early is probably quite a good strategy. It gives you flexibility as you go, rather than... Well, I mean, I guess it's the risk, isn't it? Because you can start doing a lot of trading, as you're kind of talking about there, and end up with a great deal less money than the budget everyone starts with at the beginning of the season. So that's going to be part of the equation, of course. But then I guess the other part of the equation is trying to pick your drivers and, to a lesser extent, I suppose, your constructor, kind of cleverly, which is by essentially reading the rules of how point scoring is achieved, and also the turbo and mega driver rules. It's not just where your driver's going to finish in the points order. It's about how they do compared to their teammates and things like that. I mean, that seems overlooked a bit to me. This is actually the first time I read the rules, was picking this team the first time. I didn't even really do it last year. And it seems like I thought I'd done a good job, but only one of my drivers has increased in value. But that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you've got more bank, you can obviously pick better drivers of your entire team. And when picking your team, especially at the beginning, I think this is going to be even more important this year because of people gaining money towards the end of the year. It might be less of a problem. But your worst driver is actually a really important one. In my case, I've got a fairly top-heavy team of Red Bull, Verstappen, Perez, Norris, and then I've got Gasly and Mick Schumacher. Now, Mick Schumacher, obviously, everyone's thinking Haas, that they're going to finish last every race. However, if I were to pick someone like Russell, which I could afford instead, due to the way points are divvied out, especially in the bottom half, places gained and lost are worth 2 points or negative 2 points. So if you have Russell, who's really good on a Saturday, can outpace the Williams, but then falls back to the average of the car during a race, anytime he loses positions, he loses points. So having someone like Schumacher at the back of the grid, anytime there's a DNF in front of him, he's going to gain those 2 points. Even if he doesn't gain a position on track, he'll end up gaining more points. And to that point, Mick Schumacher last round scored 11 points, which was better than Carlos Sainz, better than Stroll, better than Ocon, better than Giovinazzi. So as you can see, it doesn't matter that you're not finishing in the top. Basically, once you're outside the top 10, you need someone who's going to be making the most positions every race.
It's really interesting the way these teams are devised. I have brought up yours. You're ranked pretty highly, 23rd in Formula McGinley. Team Nyaum 7000 BPM Smoothballs remix.
That's me. That's a reference to the Chemical Brothers song that they did at the start of 2019 that Formula One tried to make their audio cue, whatever.
Yes, how could we forget? A weird film clip, but I think that's pretty much par for the course. Your team's looking very good, as you said. My team of Ricciardo, Gasly, Perez, Ocon, Vettel. The less said about them, the better. Except for Perez, actually. He's got some green. He's got some green on his card, which is all right. But the less said about the rest of them, the better. Look, we're going to check in with you periodically over the course of the year to see how Formula McGinley and Fantasy Formula One's evolving more generally. I think there were some good introductory tips, though. I think some people can go away and have a think about their team. And you are the man to ask, not only for the insightful tweets and information, but of course you're very much in the sim world. You're plugged into this stuff. You've got your own business as well, Simple Sim Computers. People who are a little bit more interested in the sim side of things, very much advisable that they look into this. Tell us a little bit about it.
It was just a happy piece of COVID stance, as every man, woman and dog decided to start a business when they were locked inside last year. We just saw people getting ripped off by, I won't name names, but larger electronic companies when it came to buying computers to get into stuff like iRacing. And having been around sim racing for 15 years and a mate of mine who's been into computers for as long, thought, hey, we could help out here. We can, start a little business that focuses on the sim racing community. We know what you do need and what you don't need in a computer, and we're not going to be charging you an arm and a leg for it.
It's worth definitely taking a look if you're in the market for a sim computer. simplesimcomputers.com.au. Go and check it out if you're in the market for one. They're not going to rip you off. I think you know who we're alluding to, companies that rip off not only consumers but the taxpayer. Make up your own conclusions on that one. Matt, we'll chat again in about a month's time. Looking forward to it.
Follow Box of Neutrals on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the others. And listen to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and wherever you find good podcasts. The Hairdresser, maybe. They don't always play music.
This weekend, Formula One is back after a lengthy, undeserved, unearned break. And after that, we'll be wishing we had that break back again because the races will start coming thick and fast. Rodney, let's ask now because we may not speak again for at least, one more week. Who knows what's going to happen to this program next week? Maybe not till the end of the year. Depends on how much of a Nico Hulkenberg situation we're going to be in. But how do you see this one playing out? I know we've had one race, but is this going to be the season we all wanted?
If by the season we all wanted you mean that Mercedes still wins it inexplicably and that Vettel continues to spin and crash, then probably. I think the writing's on the wall with the early win from Mercedes, even when they're, maybe don't have the fastest car or aren't in the best shape they've ever been in. For them to still get away with a win, the signs are ominous for the season. So, again, the best you can kind of hope for in a season like this is a few little anomalies, a few good performances that are rewarded with points and victories. That's the best we can hope for week in, week out. Let's bring that good spirit to the upcoming race.
That's the minimum we can do, I think. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. You can find Box of Neutrals wherever you get your favourite podcast. Leave us a rating and a review as well if you like the show, even if you just like the Manscaped ads. People Get around that. Whatever. We do a lot of other content, but if you just like the ads, that's fine. The rating based on that is fine. I'm happy with that. You can also find us on social media, of course, and at boxofneutrals.com. Don't forget to sign up to Formula McGinley, the F1 fantasy competition. Ahead of the race, of course, entries close for this round before qualifying, so don't forget that. Check your local guides for details. Thanks for Matt Walker, of course, for joining me earlier, and Rodney, thank you so much for appearing on the show.
Absolute pleasure.
My name has been Michael, and this is Box of Neutrals. We'll catch you next week.